the heart of an industrial revolution is an innovation that changes everything. Building AI Boston sees artificial intelligence as a renaissance. From the heart of innovation and the mecca of tech learning, we bring you AI for Real People, a conversation for everyone. Welcome back to Building AI Boston. Today we're diving into part 2 of our fascinating conversation with Joanna Peña-Bickley, the mother of cognitive experience design. Let's jump right back in. So you're tapping into my favorite area of research, and I thank goodness that you made the leap, because I can't think of anything more exciting than neuroscience and human potential.
Yeah.
And I am glad that you're focusing in on that as a thing that AI can really improve. Let me ask you this, because I'm just curious. I've heard that at age 40, maybe age 42, the myelinization, the insulation around those nerve endings,
Yep.
it starts to unravel. And when I heard that, I thought, well, great, this is just kind of a fact. But what I've heard is that this kind of unspooling actually allows us to get more out of the box. I'm really simplifying it, but is that part of your experience?
That has been a part of my experience. And there's also anything that if it starts to unravel, when you understand how the system works, you can help to control that process. And I think often we think about aging as something that happens to us,
Sure.
as opposed to we are absolutely that chronological age, right? The biological age, like I've put my chronological age. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm 51. It's fantastic. If I wish I had had this wisdom at 41.
Right. Yeah.
Now I'm here. So I'm looking more towards that biological age. And you find once you get it, you're like gamifying it, that we are a renewable resource through adaptation. I didn't naturally fall into it. Somebody asked me, like, what was it that did? And I said, there's this really interesting thing. It wasn't because I was really good at math, and it wasn't because I was really good at science. I liked science in the storytelling of science fiction.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I loved math in the context of computers.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Texas Instruments, to putting out Speak and Math. Are we English kids? Speak and Spell and Speak and Math.
Yeah.
I used to sit in the back of my mom's car. That was one of the tools that I got, was to help me with my spelling and phonetics. Speak and Spell and Speak and Math. And because it spoke, it spoke. It wasn't just a reading activity. It spoke. It was such a gift. I played those stupid things all day long. That said, I actually in the 4th grade, had an AI literacy course. So for all the bad that I talk about, the good, the system that had in the 80s in the state of Texas, everybody had to have AI literacy. I was AI literacy. Sorry, computer. Let me reframe that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's another. I just living in the future always.
Hour of editing.
Literacy. Let me go back to the 80s. Computers, the introduction of the computer. And it was really in that course, I was like, this is cool. And it was that I was like, I immediately started tackling. I wanted one, and then my first computer that my dad got me was a Commodore 64, not an easy interface.
Mm-hmm.
And be later that my now husband, who was my high school sweetheart, had an Apple computer that, like, his gift to me going off to college, and because I was still in high school, was giving me his Apple computer. I was like, ooh, this guy's a keeper.
Right. My uncle had the big Macintosh, the really big boxy one, and he never stopped being a Mac user, but yeah.
And the Mac interface spoke to me in a way. It was like, I can write, I can create. I was painting, I could create audio in it. There was just about anything. So gamification happened on the Commodore 64, which was really where I started to get that love for it, and then really started to apply it in a creative way, at the introduction of Apple. And just because it brought me such joy, I gamified. I never figured this out till later, which was I was gamifying the journey. The better I got, the more notoriety I got, and like the more money I made. Like it was like, holy hell. And I'm only one of the only, women at the time, only girls who was doing that. Made for a lonely ride, but I had a lot of guy friends in that on that journey. Beyond having Vibes AI, in 2019, I co-founded with my children the AI Design Core. The AI Design Core is the AI literacy lab that was really focused on bringing AI literacy to our education system because we're missing it. And so with that, because here we are again, we are repeating the cycle of what we went through in the 80s is now you could apply that directly to now in this computer revolution. I don't think it's the internet. I think it's the computing revolution at its core, if you look at the analogy of what will change. And I also don't think that it's a software revolution alone. It's a hardware one. I would tell you that we have some work to do to get more hardware experiments out there and lowering the cost to those. But all of that being said, we have not figured out what the right form factor is for this. Now, my thesis is it's this. Apple's thesis, it's a pane of glass. Today, where we take that is still anybody's game. And I still am not convinced that the market has that figured out. And you can see that we're just too new and early into it. You remember all the form factors of the desktop? And do you remember like where they tried to and you put it on your lap, but it was really like a desktop that was like the equivalent of like a 50-pound weight?
Well, think about the bicycle. Think about the giant wheel bicycle. Like this is what we always do. We make a bunch of weird stuff and then we figure out the thing that's going to work.
And I'm embarrassed to say I'm 55, and the first time I worked in an office, we had an IBM Selectric, and we were so happy that it just spit out one line at a time. I mean, and I thought, yay, it's fun to be a secretary, not.
Totally.
We were so excited by that.
But you had to remember we had to take typing class at school. So let me bring it back to the AI literacy. So that organization is focused on instituting AI literacy. And last year, after a lot of work, we got our first introduction of a bill in New York State, the first AI literacy bill to bring in to both. I said, look, we're late to the game because here's what's going to happen on this. We have to bring it into schools, but it cannot be just one generation. We've got to figure out how to upskill 50% of our global workforce in the next 1 to 3 years before serious displacement starts to take place. And that 15% displacement has already started to take place. So if you look at it, the velocity of change and skill sets that you need to be a good prompt engineer or to learn to speak to a computer to get the most out of your productivity is really critical for women to stay in the workforce. And so much of the work that we do, I said, it's my philanthropic side is ensuring that women get those, both women and girls at this point in time, that we're thinking of them in ways that we didn't think of them in the 80s.
That's fantastic. And I know Cara agrees that it's about democratizing the use of AI. That's what we're passionate about. We have male co-hosts, but we're just here for fun with you because we knew this topic would be fun to have with you. Cara, do you have any burning questions?
I am all about the estrogen fest of the sisterhood.
I love it. Let's go. We'll fix it. Well, so I love what you're saying so much, Joanna, because one thing that really bothers me or I try to point out is like if we have all the same people at the table right now that we've always had at the table, guess what? We're not going to build tools that serve more people than they do now. But I see it. I see it that we're still not understanding that. And so I make noise wherever I can about we need to diversify who's at the table right now, right this second, because we're making tools for the future and the generations ahead of us need us to fight that fight right now. So it's a mission. It's a calling,
It's a calling, it's a mission, and it has a dire consequence to who we can serve. Who will AI serve? The difference between the haves and the have-nots in the next 1 to 3 years will be their access to intelligence, their access to that wisdom. And so bringing down those barriers and bringing more in, what drives me nuts is that the disinformation has had a chilling effect, right? The conversation, the very polarized conversation, just as we've just had the most polarized conversation about our politics, what effectively happens and what we've just watched in our society is that when it is so polarized, people start to check out. And what I have seen is that the polarization of it's the best thing since sliced bread and it's the worst thing since nuclear war has been women have started to check the hell out.
Yes. So I'm so glad the audience is hearing this conversation. I think it's more important than ever to not check out and to be informed. And that's certainly a mission of Building AI Boston, is just that we believe that everybody belongs at the thought leader table. And the kinds of conversations we're having, loud and proud, are around, how to stay engaged. So Joanna, you're an inspiration, but Kara, you are too. I mean, Kara's in the mecca of tech learning. That's what I call Boston. And she's my guide to what's happening at MIT. I come from Las Vegas. We finished last in education, but you know what? We care about these conversations. And so that's why we're having them on purpose. And we really thank you for guiding the conversation. I want to ask you really quickly, what are you excited about for the future? What gives you hope?
Oh, young people. Oh my God. I have both, like yourself. I'm a mom of 4, millennials and Gen Z. And I love their agitation. I love their, why does it have to work this way? What kind of world were you people living in? My favorite one is like they look at, I have a very funny story about my son. I'm going to embarrass him on this one. So during the pandemic, I'll give a great example of this. Their agitation, they're like, oh my God, we've got like the newest audio. So we're together, we're out in San Francisco, and the only thing open is Amoeba Records on Haight and Ashbury, like to have like communal music experience, because he loves, said, let me take you to this place. You can buy this thing, an album. We get you a record player, this whole thing. So goes and does it. I'm in the middle of a conference call and he runs in. He says, Mom, I feel so ripped off. I said, what? What do you mean? She says, it's missing half the tracks. I went, what? He said, it's missing half the tracks. The album, the back of the album, like the album art says this is this. And I said, did you flip it over? And he said, what kind of world were you living in that you had to stop and flip over a record? I said,
you couldn't jump up and down and dance.
Cassette tapes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, how funny. I can see it. Yeah, I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury when I was a kid, and that was such a crazy town.
Yeah.
And we had records. Yeah, we had records.
So Amoeba Records still exists. You could it was like, oh, this is really cool thing. And so let me show you. And then it was, what kind of forest fires were you having to like build to create music?
Exactly.
It's awesome. No, I like it. I like that they're feisty. Kara's got kids too.
That gives me hope that we've raised. Look, these are kids who were born. I get excited. We're in generation audio. Everybody said, why are podcasts so crazy? Like these kids have been speaking to computers for 10 years. Alexa's 10 years old this year.
Wow.
My baby, my other baby.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. But so they have voice, and voice recognition has been something that is like their primary interface, right? Yes, I'd say the communication with, I think we have rewired them to communicate first species to now communicate only with thumb. And I'd say, okay, one could look at it. There are social scientists, there are absolute problems with that. But I'd also tell you that it's almost like we've harkened back to a time when hieroglyphics, because of emojis and the lexicon of languages, fundamentally changed, because this new generation has had this new technology in which they are communicating differently. Now, older generations can say that's a really bad thing, but for the next evolution of it, they're in audio and they're there. And they have very high expectations of voice and very high expectations here. And for us as innovators, what gets me up is to try to meet those expectations. So, we were like, dude, where's my jetpack? And they're like, Mom, where's my damn assistant that I can that will whisper stuff into my ear and isn't, doesn't make me, I had the AI pin on a little while ago.
Yeah, and you bring it back right to the neurodivergent, right? Neurodivergent kids, like
Yeah.
some of the coolest
Yep.
applications are for folks like that and, helping people navigate this insane world where our brains are just being bombarded. I keep looking at your ear and thinking, gee, what kind of things could that help us with the stress levels we're facing and the sort
So
of
can I tell
decision
you
making?
today? Can I
Please.
tell
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
today? So for all of the listeners, one of our first thing, our P0 was beginning to work on the content that would come into the ear. What
Mm.
comes into the ear? Our ears actually one of the things go through, I think it's like 255 gigabytes of information data that is then input into our brains. Okay. We've done a lot of work in this area. But so what was going to be the first thing? And what we found was like the center of gravity right now in audio is restorative audio. And when we go this both, what's really interesting to me was how people have, if you look at the explosion in the audio category right now, the new things that are being listened to is,
Mm.
yes, music will always play a role in the entertainment space, but therapeutic audio is an emerging space that is taking off like wildfire, but it's very disorganized today.
Mm.
And so we started out by really focusing in the science, the neuroscience behind what brain entrainment is, what are the audio frequencies. And so, we had started doing as we're training our AI and working on these things, we said, let's understand our customer better. Let's put this content in existing platforms and see where the market traction is. So two things have emerged. Number one, our red hot core, who we call rejuvenation Olympians, as I described myself, but I put myself in this category. I didn't have a lexicon for it. They gave me the lexicon, the customers did. Are women 28 to 65 in
Wow.
high stress environments,
Yep.
who are looking for alternative methods than just drug methods to help with anxiety and stress. And when I saw who was listening to our audio and and why they come back and their commentary and requests, we went bing, 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 unmet need. And then the more that we've talked about with them, how they're utilizing it, it's really interesting. And you've seen it kind of bifurcate into a lot of noise in the marketplace. You see ASMR is a category. Apple was so excited to yay, we're going to give you ASMR. Like, could you actually give us a platform for these things? And the reality is today they don't exist. You're having in the existing place, you fall into a category of you're either a podcast or you're like a piece of music and there's no licensing and things. And that's what Vibes AI is coming in and saying, that audio, in a generation of audio, there's lots of new categories that help to inform and nourish our brains. And so if I'm going to put something right here, which is a sensory organ that is responsible for my balance, my physical balance, the way that we perceive safety. Who ever thought that plugging your ears was a safe thing to do on a street, ladies? As you can see, this is a spatial audio open ear architecture here of a device that is an ear clip. Because ladies, we like jewelry.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So, it needed to be for me ear jewelry and then give me superpowers. So early superpower audio. The next one is language. There's lots of us that do language learning, not just through reading the language or Duolingo, but actually experiencing the language, having it translated. When you drop into Paris, my French is terrible. My Spanish is good. French is horrible. So when I, head to Antibes next summer, that I can begin to assimilate to the cultures and really experience the culture of what it means to live in France and be able to do so that respects their culture. So we've got those kinds of features coming on the horizon as well. But there's lots of technical hurdles to get there, and you start to look at that. But it is, if I'm going to put a device that is going to be helpful to your brain, not only is it going to decode your voice to give you a daily brain readiness score. Think of it as the Oura Ring for your brain. But the thing the Oura Ring doesn't do today is enough recommendation, and that how do I get a flywheel or a loop effect of constant learning, which is the self-improvement that our brains needs.
I go to listen to like binaural beats, or I go to solfeggio frequencies when I want to meditate in a certain frame of mind.
Yeah.
So there's so much available, but thank you for creating this and really thinking forward with it when you talk about immersive language. I know I appreciate that Cara's got her incredible Describe.ai in Spanish now, and really, really bridging the justice gap.
And bringing more of that joy span into what we do. Because that without purpose, we will find apathy in anything we do. So for your listeners, that is out there. Go to your favorite podcasting platform, look up Vibes AI. All you have to do is search Vibes AI, and hopefully we can find this in the show notes here. But if you are having a moment and you need that restoration, try it. I promise you, you will leave better for it.
Thank you for the call to action. That's literally all we needed to hear today. And really appreciate this conversation. We hope to have you in upcoming episodes. We will certainly put out ways to stay in touch with you, Joanna. Any parting words? I feel like I'm so complete and so grateful for having you here today.
Thank you. You know, the parting thought that I will take all listeners is intelligence is important. And the only way to learn, the best way to get past the fear, is to experiment. You know, and truly, experimentation is about getting comfortable with discomfort. I have never grown in my life when I was in a place of comfort. Those two things don't coexist for me.
Right.
And I suspect that's true of many women.
Very true.
Very true.
Well, stay tuned for another part to this series. And also, you know, thank you so much, Joanna. We can't wait to have you back and look forward to everything you put out into the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And Cara, let's collaborate. We have to conspire to change the world.
I would love that. Come see me at Boston. We'll go back to MIT and hang out.
I'm in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Building AI Boston. Stay tuned for more enlightening episodes that put you at the forefront of the conversations shaping our future.